Hello and welcome to this month's podcast. I'm Sandra Feuell, Insurance Development Manager at the Right Mortgage and Protection Network. I'm delighted to be joined today by Alan Waddington, Director of Distribution at Cirencester Friendly. Hi, Alan.
Hi, Sandra. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be recording my first podcast and even more excited that it's all about income protection, something I truly believe everyone should know about and be at the forefront of any protection recommendation. Today, we are going to cover a range of topics from the FCA market study, customer service, and we're also looking at the effect that being off work can have on mental health. So welcome, Alan.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be your first, Sandra.
Thank you.
I was your first, so thank you.
That's a pleasure. So can I just ask you if you can share your thoughts on the FCA's pure protection market study?
Absolutely, Sandra. We've welcomed the study right from day one, not because we think there's anything fundamentally wrong with our market, but there were some areas where we, as a mutual, felt that there was perhaps a little bit less of a level playing field than perhaps there could be. And some of the distribution agreements, some of the things around commissions, restricted panels, etc., were just creeping that little bit too much towards those who've got the deepest pockets. And as a mutual, as a friendly society, we're accountable for our members' money. You know, we're not a PLC corporate insurer that can dip into capital reserves, etc., or even have loss-leading products. So just that lens from the FCA to look at, well, is this right? Is any of it restricting consumer choice? I'm happy to work with restricted panels as long as it's a fair process and it's a transparent process. We're on many panels ourselves, so it would be a little bit disingenuous of us to say that we don't agree with panels. Because we work on that basis ourselves. I do have some queries about the loaded premium aspects of it, which the FCA are going to look at. But again, I come back to, is the consumer aware of the difference between talking to someone who's using a whole of market panel or a restricted panel and loaded premiums? And I think what the FCA are looking to do here is just make sure everybody's clear on how this is meant to operate. The first iteration of the report, which is basically setting out what they know as factual, it's actually quite encouraging that they're not looking to turn the world upside down. They're looking to make sure that there's some parameters and clear guidelines for us all to work to. So we welcome it and look forward to seeing the first full report.
Excellent. Thanks, Alan, for that. So last week was the Income Protection Task Force Action Week.
That's right.
If you could offer one call to action to advisors, what would it be?
Oh, there was a lot in last week, and each week the Action Week, Awareness Week, as we used to call it, gets better and better. And we work very closely with the IPTF on this. There were lots of calls to action, but if I had to pick one, it would be the importance of reviewing client circumstances. Nothing stays the same forever. You know, if you ask anybody that you know, have they moved house in the last 5 years? Have they had kids? Have they had grandkids? Have they changed jobs? Has the salary increased? There's always a reason, why circumstances are changing. And all too often, I'm afraid, as an insurer, we see claims coming through on contracts that were sold a number of years ago. Income's changed, the job's changed. Nobody's told us. Nobody's had a review. And we ask the clients, our members, when did you last speak to your advisor about this? And very often, I'm afraid, I haven't spoken to them since I took out the policy. And you just think we've got to be better than this. Now, I know it is getting much better. And you talk to a number of the advisors who are either ambassadors or part of the 7 Advisors programme, and then lots of advisors across networks and distributors such as yourselves who are doing these reviews. That doesn't mean you have to rebroker it and churn it every time. Far from it. Often you can adapt the existing policy using GIOs or just simple amendment processes, or it might still be fit for purpose. But unless we do those reviews, you just don't know. And also it reminds the clients, the consumers, of the benefits within the policy, the added value benefits, the GP24 services, the mental health services, etc. So you asked me what my number one tip would be, it would be that checking in, with their clients.
100% agree with you, particularly with income protection, because it is very connected to their occupation and their salary. So it's something that I'm going to look to work with the advisors in the network over the next few months. And you did mention service there when you were speaking a minute ago. How do you see things with regards to service from providers at the moment? Is there anything that needs to be done?
Yeah, it's an interesting topic because obviously we're close to what we do and monitor that on a regular basis. And I think back to when I was, I say to my team, when I was doing a proper job, when I was an account manager and a BDM,
a proper job,
and a proper job, and advisors used to say, "Oh, we like working with you, Alan, because you return our calls." And I just go, "What do you mean?" Well, we make phone calls to our BDM account manager and we don't get a call back. And I just kind of go, what? And again, it's something that, we instill in our team. And again, they look at me as if I've gone a little bit mad. Why wouldn't we return a phone call? But we hear this from advisors that they've spoken to or tried to speak to a BDM and they don't get a call back. And, we often associate service with things like turnaround times and, amendments, etc., or how easy it is to access online services. Very often, service is just somebody returning a call or somebody actually taking a call. And our whole operation is geared around service. We members of the Institute of Customer Service and being accredited with distinction for our service scores. And that's not me blowing our own trumpet. It's just highlighting that actually, if you do put the effort into service, making sure you've got the right people in the right place at the right time to answer calls, deal with inquiries, you've got processes that work, you can get it right. Underwriting turnaround times are always a topic of conversation, aren't they, Sandra?
Yes, definitely.
What do you do? Do you make everything automated so you never get a human being decision, so you get 100% straight through rate? Well, you might find that half of those get declined because you haven't got a human being looking at it. If you've got human beings, you're going to have to wait. We try to keep that time as minimal as possible. We got a little bit upset with ourselves in the summer when we slipped to 5 days. And again, we had advisors saying to us, why are you worried about 5 days? But we are worried about 5 days because somewhere at the end of this, as a consumer waiting to know, can I get that cover? So we aim to turn everything around within kind of 2 or 3 days as best we can. The complex cases are more tricky, but it's about making sure that your processes are right and appropriate for the kind of level of business that you're trying to do, so that you can actually provide that service. But we need to do better as an industry. We need to make sure we're investing in technology and systems that means that the simple stuff just goes through. It's the complex and more tricky cases and situations that you need a human being very often to look at it and go, do you know what, we can do that, find a way to do something. But use of artificial intelligence will come into the fore. We're looking at it very closely. I know others are as well. We don't just want to plug something in for the sake of it. It's got to have a benefit. But, we're looking at that whole area of how can it benefit our members, benefit our advisor partners, so that the things that we still need a human being for, we've got more time to do that.
And I suppose as well, services doesn't just relate to application stage. It also relates to claims. So how important do you think an advisor's involvement is during the claims process? And do you think it can make a difference to the outcome for the client?
Absolutely, Sandra. It's vital, if I'm honest. And again, I don't mind sharing with you, when I joined Cirencester 3 years ago, we had a claims process that was automatically assuming that we don't involve the advisor unless the member, their client, asks us to. We flip that, and it's automatically assumed that we do involve the advisor, that we let them know unless the member tells us not to. And sometimes they don't want us to. The advisor might be a relative or a close friend, and they don't want them knowing the medical information. We get that. Since we did that, we've seen a transformation in the speed of turnaround in terms of claims decisions, because guess what? The advisor has got access to their financial records, or they know where to find them. They know what to do. They know how to guide the member, their client, in terms of obtaining the medical information. But also, one of the key things on this, and we'll probably talk about this today or another time, is the importance of getting people back to work. People actually don't want to be off for a long time. They want to get back to work, and often the advisor can signpost their client to support services, medical services, whether it's provided by ourselves or elsewhere, as part of other plans. We've got examples of that where the advisor has got involved, and we've been able to support then our member, their client, to get the help that they need to get back to work sooner. And it's not about us paying the claim for a shorter period. Yes, that is a benefit. We all live in a commercial world. But the reality is it's about that member, that policyholder, getting back to work sooner, because all the evidence suggests that that's the best thing for them. We get in touch with the advisor as soon as we can. We let them know that there's a claim in for one of their clients, and 99 times out of 100, the advisor jumps on it and is keen to get involved.
Yeah, I mean, we all understand the impact of not working on someone's mental health. And yes. I suppose when you're looking at claims, there is other wellbeing and financial support available to the customer that you would support them with.
Absolutely, Sandra. And it's a two-way street. Ultimately, the member, the policyholder, has got to want the help. Sometimes they don't feel that they need it, or they may be getting the medical attention that they need elsewhere. But often we find that people just don't know where to turn. Yeah. And someone's off with a musculoskeletal injury. They've had an accident, they've broken a bone, or they've done multiple bits of damage, and all of those things are being fixed by the right people. But they're off work, they're at home, they're not mixing with people, they can get lonely. And we've seen the impact on people's mental health in those circumstances. And we have a referral service with our partners on this, Red Arc, who people will know well, where we refer our members to Red Arc for support from a dedicated nurse who will guide them in terms of support for their mental health, whether that's directly with a nurse or using some online CBT or other training on there. And what we actually do, where someone is actually signed off because of a mental health condition and actually in claim, that's now an automatic referral to Red Arc for those support services, to make sure that we're short-circuiting any assistance that they need. We know the difficulties with the NHS accessing these services. They're doing as best they can. The type of customer, the demographic that we operate in, which is mostly people in higher risk occupations, manual jobs, etc., very few of these people have private medical insurance, so they are relying on the NHS, or they'd have to pay for it themselves to go private. If we can support them with those services that we're paying for, then it's a win for everybody. But there is evidence out there of people off work for a long period of time. It gets harder and harder to return to work and can affect their mental health. So anything that we, as a society ourselves or across the industry, can do to help people, the better it is for everybody.
Agree, because income protection is not just about replacing their income. It's all the other additional benefits that they can use throughout the term of the policy. Right. And I think it's really important that the advisors let the customer know what there is to claim on. So as a mutual yourself, maybe you could just explain briefly what a mutual is. Could you just, what do you think your role is in today's financial landscape?
Yeah, no, that's a really, really good question, Sandra. And again, just to explain to those that don't fully understand, mutual means we are mutually owned, and that mutuality is with our members. So we have no parent company, we have no shareholders. Everything is run for the benefit of our members. And any surplus that we make, or profit, is recycled back for the benefit of our members, or invested in new technology, processes, etc., again for the benefit of our members. So when we're assessing a claim, we're assessing a claim purely on the basis of the benefit to our member, not does this affect our bottom line. And it is a difference, and it also affects the culture of the organisation. And again, just to be clear, I've worked for many PLC corporate insurers, had fantastic cultures. But ultimately, if you ask anybody that sits on the board or executive committee of that PLC, the ultimate driver is shareholder value, and that share price and delivering dividends and growth in the share value. We are completely different. Our sole aim is to be here for the benefit of our members. Yes, we have to be commercially viable because otherwise you can't survive.
Yes.
So that means that our products have to be profitable, but because it goes back to the benefit of the member. And where does that fit in today's world? If you think about how many people shop at your local co-op, they're all mutually owned. How many people put money into savings plans with regional building societies, etc. They're all mutually owned. And it's because each mutual cares about its members and the community that it operates in. How many years ago now? 10 years ago now, we set up what we call our 125 Foundation, which celebrated our 125th anniversary. And that's a pot of money that we put to one side for the benefit of our members in financial hardship. And this is over and above what we pay out in income protection claims. And that's the difference with mutuality, that we're finding ways to support our members over and above just what you've paid for on a policy or a contract. And if I just give you one microcosm example of it, we had a gentleman that had been off sick for a number of years that was in a particularly specialist occupation and could no longer do the occupation that he was doing because of a condition, and basically needed to get back to work. We've actually paid for or contributed towards the cost of some additional training for him to become a counsellor, a trained mental health counsellor. So he's now back in work doing something completely different, earning money. He's in a better state himself. And that's over and above what we'd been paying to him on his income protection claim. So again, I don't mean that as a selling point for Cirencester Friendly. It's something that I know other mutuals do as well. So there are benefits for the members and for the advisors, knowing that their clients are going to be looked after, not just with a policy document sitting in a drawer, but as a member of something much larger.
Excellent. Obviously, your Cirencester specialising in income protection, but obviously there's other types of policies out there. So do you think multi-benefit is always the best answer for a customer?
That's a really interesting question. And again, I've worked for insurers that do multi-benefit. So it would be, again, unfair of me to say that it doesn't work. Multi-benefit does work. And it's right that it's a growing market. Yeah. And for the right customer, putting the term life, income protection and or plus some critical illness cover with one insurer, if that's the best insurer for that client, for all of those, means it's one application, it's one set of underwriting, it's one direct debit. The consumer, the client understands this is my cover. This is covering my mortgage, my rent, my lifestyle, if I'm off ill, if I get a serious condition, absolutely perfect. We operate in a space at Cirencester Friendly where we're looking after perhaps some of the underserved members of our society, people in higher risk occupations, people who don't sit at a desk. They might wear overalls or a hard hat or sit behind a steering wheel for a living. And the income protection policies with some of the mainstream insurers for those people can be quite expensive. So if that's part of a multi-benefit, even with the discounts, that can still be quite expensive. And when it comes to claim, with the greatest respect, are those insurers geared up to look after a claim for those kind of people? Whereas we've been doing that for 135 years. So the easy answer is no, it's not always the best answer, but it can be the right answer for lots of people. And again, it's an area that we're monitoring. We only do income protection at the moment, so we have no plans to move into that term life space as we sit here at the moment, but we do watch it with interest. I'm not saying to advisors don't do it. That really would be wrong of me to do that, because for the right client, it can be right. But what I would encourage advisors to do is, particularly for people in higher risk occupations or even things like teachers and nurses, etc., anybody in the medical professions, just do a quick comparison with a standalone income protection contract. You might be surprised in the difference in overall price.
I believe that they will actually. It's been really interesting talking to you today, Alan, and I want to thank you for joining me on this podcast, and I hope anyone listening was finding this really interesting. And thanks again, Alan. and hopefully I'll see you soon.
Thank you, Sandra. It's been an absolute delight to talk to you today. Thank you for the opportunity. I wish you well in your new role and also with future podcasts, and I shall no doubt see you at some upcoming events.
You will. Thank you, Alan. Take care.
Thank you.